Hillbilly Jim, the happy-go-lucky country boy of the WWE, might seem like all smiles and good times. But behind that friendly facade lies a career filled with foreclosure, controversy, and a shady Hall of Fame induction. You have to hear about this. James Morris, better known as Hillbilly Jim, was born in rural Kentucky back in 1952. Raised on good old-fashioned Southern values, Jim was a natural outdoorsman and loved the country lifestyle. He grew up in Mudlick, Kentucky, where he developed a passion for physical fitness, working hard from a young age, building both his character and strength. Before hitting the big leagues, Hillbilly Jim started wrestling in local circuits around the South. Standing at 6 feet 7 inches and weighing around 320 pounds, he was impossible to ignore. Fans loved his down-to-earth personality and towering physique, and it wasn't long before the big leagues took notice. In the early 1980s, Hillbilly Jim got his big break when he joined the WWE, which was then known as the WWF. He first appeared as a fan in the audience, cheering on his hero Hulk Hogan, but that wasn't enough for him. He was itching to get into the action himself. With a little help from Hogan, he trained and transformed from a fan into a full-fledged WWE superstar. Most WWE fans remember Hillbilly Jim as a big, friendly guy with a contagious smile and that classic country look. But like many wrestling icons, his story isn't without a few controversial moments. Let's dive into some of the lesser-known issues that surfaced over the years. Let's start with Hillbilly Jim's Hall of Fame induction in 2018. When WWE announced his induction, fans had some mixed feelings. While many cheered for him, saying it was long overdue, there was a crowd that questioned whether he'd truly earned a Hall of Fame spot. Unlike some of the heavy hitters, Hillbilly Jim wasn't known for main-eventing big pay-per-views or dominating the championship scene. His fans argue that Hillbilly Jim was an unforgettable part of WWE's 1980s roster, even if he wasn't the biggest name in terms of titles. He connected with fans in a unique way. His country boy persona made him stand out. Plus, he was often seen as one of the WWE's good guys, staying out of trouble and representing the company with that big smile. For a lot of fans, the Hall of Fame isn't just about in-ring achievements. It's also about the impact a wrestler had on the WWE brand. And Hillbilly Jim was a huge part of that family-friendly, over-the-top entertainment that defined wrestling in the 80s. On the flip side, critics pointed out that Hillbilly Jim's wrestling career was relatively short, especially compared to some of his peers. His role was often as a lovable side character, but not necessarily as a main eventer. Some fans felt that this didn't quite measure up to the honor of a Hall of Fame spot. But at the end of the day, WWE made the call, and for those who grew up watching Hillbilly Jim, it felt like a nostalgic, well-deserved recognition. Now, time for the second controversy. One of the defining aspects of Hillbilly Jim's WWE career was, of course, his character. He was the friendly country boy, a big guy with overalls, a straw hat, and a strong, wholesome vibe. While this gimmick made him a fan favorite, it wasn't without its critics. Some people felt that his hillbilly persona leaned a bit too much on stereotypes about rural life. For fans who loved him, though, Hillbilly Jim was a breath of fresh air. He wasn't there to be a heel or intimidate anyone. He was there to entertain. He had a lighthearted nature and a warm personality, which made him relatable to audiences. And let's not forget, Hillbilly Jim went on to mentor young wrestlers, share positive messages, and do a lot of charity work. For them, the character was never about stereotypes. It was about having fun, and Jim himself seemed to embrace the role with genuine enthusiasm. Moving away from the ring, Hillbilly Jim's personal life hasn't been without its own bumps in the road. In 2002, he faced a legal issue when he was arrested for driving under the influence in Kentucky. Reports said his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit, which definitely put a dent in his image. This wasn't just a minor mishap. It had consequences. Legally, he likely faced fines, a possible license suspension, and maybe even mandatory alcohol education classes. But perhaps more than anything, the arrest disappointed fans. Hillbilly Jim had always been seen as one of the WWE's clean-cut, family-friendly figures. So for fans, especially those who looked up to him as a role model, it was a tough pill to swallow. Thankfully, he continued to work within the wrestling community, and he didn't let this incident define him. However, it was a reminder that even the wrestlers with the most wholesome images can face personal challenges. In 2016, another personal struggle for Hillbilly Jim made headlines. He was facing foreclosure on his home in Kentucky. For fans who assumed that every wrestler lived a life of financial security, this news was a bit of a reality check. The reasons behind the foreclosure weren't exactly clear, but it's not unusual for retired wrestlers to experience financial difficulties. Jim had undergone several surgeries, including a hip replacement, which can be extremely costly. Medical expenses, combined with a lack of steady income from wrestling at that point, might have played a role in his financial troubles. Like many in his generation, Jim likely didn't have the massive WWE salaries that top-tier wrestlers enjoy today. And while he still made appearances, it was no longer a steady income. This foreclosure situation brought fans face to face with the reality that life after wrestling can be financially difficult, even for well-known personalities. So looking back, Hillbilly Jim's story is about more than his in-ring persona. While he's remembered as the friendly country character with a big heart, his life has had its share of ups and downs. But one thing we know for sure is that his legacy was great. Let's learn a thing or two about it if you're a true fan. From the muddy hills of Kentucky to the bright lights of the WWF, now known as WWE, Hillbilly Jim has had one amazing journey. Before he became Hillbilly Jim, James Morris was just a regular guy with a love for wrestling. He started his career in the wrestling world back in the mid-1970s, working with Stampede Wrestling. His first big match was against Carl Moffat, which set him on the path to becoming a professional wrestler. But he didn't stop there. Soon after, he joined the Continental Wrestling Association in Memphis, wrestling under the name Harley Davidson. Now, as Harley Davidson, Morris had this tough biker look, which fit right in with the rough-and-tumble wrestling scene of the time. He even formed a memorable tag team with a guy named Roger Smith, who went by Dirty Rhodes because he looked a lot like the famous Dusty Rhodes. Together, they entertained the crowds and became quite popular in the Memphis area. In 1984, Morris made his way to the big leagues, the WWF. At first, he showed up in the front row as just a fan, known as Big Jim. He was always there, cheering on the wrestlers, and especially Hulk Hogan. But soon enough, Big Jim decided he wanted in on the action himself. His journey to becoming a wrestler actually started on the legendary show Piper's Pit, where Rowdy Roddy Piper offered to train him. But instead of Piper, Jim chose Hulk Hogan as his mentor. With Hogan's help, he transformed into the character we all know and love, Hillbilly Jim. Straight out of Mudlick, Kentucky, this new persona was all about the simple country lifestyle. He wore overalls, had a bushy beard, and had a joyful, carefree attitude that fans immediately fell in love with. His theme song, "Don't Go Messin' with a Country Boy," was catchy and added to his folksy charm. Hillbilly Jim wasn't just a wrestler. He was a character you wanted to root for. Hillbilly Jim's debut matches were a hit with fans, especially when he teamed up with his buddy, Hulk Hogan. One of his early big wins was against Rene Goulet at the War to Settle the Score event in 1985. But unfortunately, just as his career was taking off, he got injured while chasing Johnny Five around the ring during a match in San Diego. He slipped on a wet spot, injuring his knee and sidelining him for 6 months. But that didn't mean the end of Hillbilly Jim. During his recovery, the WWF introduced a group of family members for him, like Uncle Elmer, Cousin Luke, and Cousin Junior. Hillbilly Jim became their manager, cheering them on from the sidelines, and fans got a kick out of the whole Hillbilly family theme. Once he was back in action, Hillbilly Jim continued to bring the fun to the WWF. He often teamed up with his family members or other big names like Andre the Giant. He was usually pitted against the monster heels of the era, big bad guys like Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy. His matches were lighthearted and entertaining, making him a fan favorite for kids and families. In 1986, he had a short but memorable feud with Mr. Fuji, where they had a series of tuxedo matches. This wasn't about intense rivalries, it was all about fun, and Hillbilly Jim played his part perfectly, keeping the audience entertained with every match. Hillbilly Jim made his WrestleMania debut at WrestleMania 2, joining in on the Open Invitational Battle Royal. His next WrestleMania appearance was even more of a spectacle. At WrestleMania 3, he faced off with King Kong Bundy in a match involving midget wrestlers. It was one of the more unique matches of the event, with a mix of humor and excitement that kept fans talking. In 1988, at the Survivor Series, he teamed up with Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Randy Savage, Hercules, and Coco Beware. Together, they went up against a powerhouse team of Big Boss Man, Akeem, Ted DiBiase, King Haku, and the Red Rooster. Hillbilly Jim was eliminated by Akeem, but Hogan and Savage managed to win the match in the end. By the late 80s, Hillbilly Jim's in-ring career was slowing down, but he still appeared regularly until around 1990. One of his last high-profile matches was against Earthquake, a tough competitor who dominated Jim in a quick 2-minute match. His final WWF match came on August 31st, 1990, where he defeated Black Bart in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But even after his wrestling days were behind him, Hillbilly Jim stayed with the WWF. He came back in 1992 to co-host Primetime Wrestling alongside big names like Vince McMahon, Jim Duggan, and Bobby Heenan, until the show ended in 1993. Hillbilly Jim's love for wrestling didn't end there. In the mid-90s, he returned to the WWF as a guest referee and later became the manager of the Godwins, a tag team of pig farmers who were also billed as his cousins. They even won the WWF Tag Team Championship under his guidance. He made a special appearance in the Gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania X7 in 2001. Hillbilly Jim eliminated a few competitors, but was ultimately taken down by the Iron Sheik. Outside the ring, he took on new roles like hosting WWE's WrestleMania Access tours and working with fans at events around the country. In 2005, he started a weekly radio show called Hillbilly Jim's Moonshine Matinee on Sirius XM's Outlaw Country Channel. Fans loved hearing his stories and the classic country and southern rock music he shared each week. Hillbilly Jim's personality was larger than life, and his charm made him a perfect fit for some fun projects outside the ring. He even made it into the cartoon world, appearing in the animated series Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, where fans got to see a lighter side of the wrestling characters they loved. He also got some video game spotlight, appearing in WWE SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain, which was a hit with wrestling fans. But Hillbilly Jim wasn't just about wrestling and video games. He also had a musical side. He recorded the song Don't Go Messing with a Country Boy for the wrestling album, which went gold. The album's sequel, Pile Driver, the wrestling album 2, featured Jim in a duet called Waking Up Alone with a singer credited as Gertrude. His music brought out his friendly, down-to-earth vibe that fans loved. In 2014, Jim appeared on the reality show WWE Legends House on the WWE Network. The show brought together WWE legends, giving fans a behind-the-scenes look at their lives. It was a hit, and Jim's genuine personality shined through, showing fans the real person behind the Hillbilly Jim character. 2 years later, in 2016, Jim published his autobiography, Hillbilly Jim, the incredible story of a wrestling superstar, where he shared his journey through wrestling and life. It gave fans a deeper look into his experiences and was a perfect addition for anyone who had followed his career. After stepping out of the wrestling ring, Jim took on a surprising new role with Champion Stamp Company, Inc., a coin, currency, and stamp dealership. He became a regular at coin and currency shows, not necessarily as an expert, but as a popular spokesperson who could draw in a crowd. He even started his own collection of coins and paper money, enjoying the hobby as part of his post-wrestling life. Today, Hillbilly Jim, born James Morris, is enjoying a life away from the wrestling ring, but he hasn't slowed down. He's still deeply involved with fans and wrestling culture, making occasional appearances at WWE events and conventions, where he's warmly welcomed by longtime fans. His love for music is still alive and well, as he continues to host his Sirius XM radio show, Hillbilly Jim's Moonshine Matinee, on the Outlaw Country Channel. Every Saturday, he spins classic country and southern rock tunes and shares stories from his days on the road with the WWF, giving fans a taste of his laid-back country boy personality. After decades of entertaining fans around the world, Hillbilly Jim was officially inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018. It was a well-deserved honor, and it cemented his place in wrestling history. Hillbilly Jim's journey in wrestling is a great story of fun, personality, and pure charm. He started out in Stampede Wrestling, where he quickly made a name for himself with his unique style and big heart. But it wasn't until he joined the WWF, now WWE, that he really became a household name. As soon as he stepped into the ring, fans knew they were in for something special. His character was pretty simple, a big, strong country boy wearing overalls, but there was so much more to him than that. Hillbilly Jim wasn't just about wrestling moves. He had a way of making people smile, and that made him stand out in a crowd of bigger-than-life personalities. With his friendly attitude and his famous catchphrase, "Don't go messin' with a country boy," he became a fan favorite. His charm and humor were infectious, and fans couldn't get enough of him. Even though he didn't hold any major titles, Hillbilly Jim's impact on wrestling was huge. He was a regular in some of the most memorable matches alongside legends like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. He showed that wrestling wasn't always about being the toughest guy in the ring. It was about connecting with the audience, having fun, and just being yourself. Hillbilly Jim will always be remembered as one of the most lovable characters in wrestling history, a true country boy who captured the hearts of millions. Thanks for taking a trip down memory lane with us. If you enjoyed hearing about Hillbilly Jim, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more great